The question about how you're feeling since you weren't mentioned in the genius section of the Trump speech about all of the geniuses in your family.
I'm crushed, although I would like to point out to Donald that sometimes genius skips a generation. But clearly he wasn't factoring that into his calculations. I do find it fascinating that he thinks just because my uncle was a physicist and my grandfather was really good at using federal money to screw working people over, that somehow redounds to Donald's intelligence. Yeah, what?
I want to turn
what do you say, man, woman, camera, person? I don't know.
I want to turn to your professional insight here as a psychologist. What you're seeing when you see a patient, let's call him that, up there with a microphone talking about, I don't like it when people call me stupid. And then he goes on to draw more attention to people calling him stupid and then attempts to prove that he's not. And I think it's an objective listener could say he did not prove that. What is happening psychologically with that person?
I've often referred to Donald as a black hole of need, and it's never enough. Any compliments people give him, it's never enough to fill that void, partially because what they're saying isn't convincing to him because they're only saying what he wants them to hear, and also because he knows it isn't true. He knows he's a deeply unintelligent person. He knows that he's severely damaged and has severe limitations. So he's always trying to fill a need that is unfillable. And it's sort of like when he talks about love, it's clear that he doesn't understand what it is because he's never had experience with it. And it ends up, as you say, just proving the point he's desperately trying to avoid having been proven. So that clip you showed was a perfect example of how he keeps digging and then he gets distracted by another example of his narcissism, which again is unending.
And I want to reach back into the previous segment for you to referee a point that I passed a judgment on, but I prefer your judgment on it. And that was the question of who is stupider, Donald Trump or Donald Trump Jr.? And I think we see on January 6th that Donald Trump Jr. in those texts knows what his father should do. And he also appears to be convinced that his father does not know what to do. And I get the feeling that's not the first time for Donald Trump Jr. thinking, my father has no idea what to do next. And I have heard from people who worked on that television show that they used to do, that was a common experience. And around the set, Donald Trump Jr. was constantly telling people that his father was lost and had no idea what to do. So that seems like a dynamic that's been going on for a while.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've had people ask me about the relative intelligence of the siblings, but never their intelligence in relation to their fathers. So I think you're a lot kinder to Donnie than I would be, certainly. But what I see in that moment is a perfect example of Donald's inability to be strategic, even if it's his own expense. And think about why that is in that instance. Not because he was necessarily stupid, although we could certainly make that argument, but because his ego was getting fed because all of those people, that violent mob was fighting for him. Democracy be damned.
The contempt finding today in a New York court, it's the first time, and it's kind of remarkable, that such a contemptuous man who has been in litigation all of his life is being held in contempt, well, certainly as in his post-presidency, being held in contempt for the very first time. You're in litigation with him now. It could come to that in your litigation. What do you think it means to Donald Trump? I assume for him, it's just another stage of the litigation. Okay, so we got a contempt order today. That's $10,000 a day. We'll play around with that as long as we have to, and I wouldn't think that it would be anything Donald Trump would be struck by.
Yeah, Lawrence, I completely agree with you. And this is one of the tragedies of what we're dealing with right now. There seems to be no way to hold this man accountable, and he desperately needs to be. But what? So he's been held in contempt. He'll delay. His lawyers will delay. In the meantime, if anybody thinks that he's going to put his hand in his own pocket and pay the $10,000 daily fine, I have a bridge down the street that I can sell you. It's never going to happen. He will either raise funds from the people he continues to do, or, as he has in previous instances, he'll make the Republican Party pay for his legal fees.
And I'm sorry, as you go forward in your litigation with him, are there any models that you're seeing in the behavior with the civil litigation with the New York State Attorney General that, as you're looking at it, it gives you a route to how to handle your litigation with him?
Honestly, all we can do is keep plugging away and know that we have the facts on our side. We have the case, and hope that they don't continue to throw up roadblocks, which again is all that they do. And the advantage that I think Letitia James has and her office has, and that I have, and that a couple of other people have, is that I think for the very first time in Donald's life, we can wait him out, because we have allies who are willing to give us the kind of help that so many other people have never had when faced with the onslaught of delays and, forcing people to spend money they don't have, that Donald has always been able to do in the past.
I want to take a quick look at Piers Morgan's interview with Donald Trump, which is, there's a lot less there than the promos suggest, but it's kind of an interesting look at your uncle and the way he looks physically in this clip. Let's take a look at this.
I think I'm a very honest man, much more honest than you, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a free and fair election. You lost.
Only a fool would think
You
that.
think I'm a fool?
I do now, yeah.
With
Excuse me.
Okay, with respect,
The
produce
legislature.
the hard evidence.
Excuse me.
The most.
I saw him in a way that I haven't seen him before. This up close HD camera showing the absurdity of the makeup and the sweating and just the tension that he's dealing with. This kind of ridiculous interviewer who's softballing the way through almost the whole thing. What did you see in that?
I actually saw another clip from that, and the first thing I see is another failure of the circumstances in which we're living. Donald should not be in a position to be sitting for interviews like this. He should be indicted. He should be in depositions. He should not be free to go on national television, or I'm not even sure where Piers Morgan's interview is being shown, but he should not be in a position to get on any significant platform and peddle his lies about a stolen election, that the only person trying to steal that election was him and his significant number of sycophants and enablers, right? And he certainly shouldn't be allowed, and this is the other clip I saw, to claim that the Ukraine war or the Russia's war against Ukraine wouldn't be happening if the 2020 election hadn't been rigged. It is so dangerous that there is no pushback, and that he continues to be given the opportunity to spread his lies, as you said, with practically no pushback from somebody like Piers Morgan, who I guess is another despicable white man allowed to fail up.
Mary Trump, thank you very much for joining our discussion once again. We always appreciate it.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you.